Caspian stood at the entrance of the gallery, his heart racing with a mix of excitement and anxiety. The vibrant colors of the artwork around him seemed to pulse with life, but his focus was elsewhere. After years away, he had finally returned to San Francisco, a city that held so many memories, both sweet and bittersweet. He took a deep breath, adjusting his glasses as he stepped inside, the familiar scent of paint and polished wood enveloping him. As he wandered through the crowd, admiring the eclectic pieces on display, a wave of nostalgia washed over him. He remembered the countless afternoons spent exploring art galleries with his best friend, Orion. They had been inseparable during their high school years, sharing dreams and secrets, but life had pulled them in different directions. Caspian had moved to New York for college, while Orion had stayed behind to pursue architecture. Lost in thought, Caspian nearly bumped into someone. He looked up to find himself face to face with a tall figure whose striking features were unmistakable. Orion stood before him, a warm smile spreading across his face. "Caspian, is that really you?" "Orion," Caspian exclaimed, grinning from ear to ear. The years melted away as they embraced tightly, the familiar warmth of friendship wrapping around them like an old blanket. "I can't believe it's been so long," Orion said, stepping back to take a good look at Caspian. "You look great. How's New York treating you?" "It's been amazing, but I missed this place," Caspian replied, gesturing around the gallery. "I've missed you." Orion's eyes sparkled with mischief. "Well, I'm glad you're back. We have so much catching up to do." They moved deeper into the gallery, their conversation flowing effortlessly. They reminisced about their high school days, the late-night talks about dreams and aspirations, the laughter shared over silly inside jokes. As they wandered from one piece of art to another, Caspian couldn't help but notice how Orion had grown more confident and charismatic over the years. "Remember that time we tried to paint that mural at school?" Orion laughed, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "We ended up covered in more paint than the wall." Caspian chuckled at the memory. "I still have that photo. We looked like walking rainbows." Their laughter echoed through the gallery as they continued to share stories. The chemistry between them felt electric. Every glance lingered just a moment too long, every touch sent shivers down Caspian's spine. As they reached a particularly striking painting, a swirling mix of blues and greens, Orion turned to Caspian with an intensity that made his heart race. "You know," he began slowly, "I always wondered what would have happened if we hadn't lost touch." Caspian's breath caught in his throat. He felt a rush of emotions, longing, desire, and something deeper that he couldn't quite name. "Me too," he admitted softly. Just then, a group of friends approached them, breaking the momentary tension. They exchanged pleasantries and joined in on the conversation, but Caspian couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had shifted between him and Orion. As the evening wore on and the crowd began to thin out, Orion leaned closer to Caspian. "Would you like to grab a drink afterward? Just us." Caspian's heart soared at the invitation. "I'd love that." After saying goodbye to their friends, they stepped out into the cool San Francisco air. The city buzzed with life around them as they walked side by side toward a nearby cafe. The conversation flowed easily between them, laughter punctuated their words like music. Once inside the cafe, they settled into a cozy corner booth. The warm lighting cast a golden glow over their faces as they shared stories about their lives since high school, Caspian's adventures in New York and Orion's architectural projects that had garnered attention in local magazines. But beneath the surface chatter lay an unspoken tension, a current of attraction that neither dared to acknowledge fully yet. After finishing their drinks, Orion suggested heading back to his apartment for a nightcap. "I've got some great whiskey I think you'd enjoy," he said with a playful grin. Caspian hesitated for just a moment before nodding eagerly. "Sure, that sounds perfect." As they walked through the streets of San Francisco under the starry sky, Caspian couldn't shake off the feeling that this night was only just beginning, and that it held promises he had longed for but never dared to dream about. When they arrived at Orion's apartment, it felt like stepping into another world, one filled with art and warmth that reflected Orion's personality perfectly. They settled onto the couch with glasses in hand, laughter echoing around them as they reminisced about old times. But soon enough, an innocent comment about their high school days led them into playful banter about who was more artistic, Caspian or Orion. In a fit of laughter and competitiveness, they ended up in a spontaneous water fight in Orion's large bathtub after deciding it would be fun to recreate some of their childhood antics. The water splashed everywhere as they playfully shoved each other back and forth. Their laughter filled the room until it turned into something deeper, a moment where time seemed to stand still as they locked eyes amidst the chaos. It was then that Caspian felt it, the undeniable connection between them pulsing stronger than ever before. As they both caught their breath amidst dripping wet hair and splashes of water surrounding them, Caspian realized this was more than just friendship, it was something beautiful waiting to unfold. And just like that, the night transformed from mere nostalgia into something far more profound. The laughter from the water fight still echoed in Orion's apartment as Caspian leaned back against the cool porcelain of the bathtub, droplets glistening on his skin. The playful chaos had left them both breathless, their hearts racing not just from the fun but from something deeper that lingered in the air between them. Orion wiped a hand across his forehead, his eyes sparkling with mischief. "I can't believe we just did that. We're adults now, Caspian. What happened to our maturity?" Caspian chuckled, shaking his head. "Maturity is overrated. Besides, it felt good to be carefree again." He glanced at Orion, who was leaning against the edge of the tub, a playful grin still plastered on his face. In that moment, Caspian felt a rush of warmth, an undeniable attraction that made his heart flutter. "Okay, Mr. Carefree," Orion teased, splashing a bit of water in Caspian's direction. "Let's see if you can keep up with me outside of the bathtub." Caspian raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Oh, is that a challenge?" "Absolutely," Orion replied with a wink, standing up and reaching for a towel. "Get ready for some real fun." After drying off and changing into comfortable clothes, Caspian in a soft t-shirt and sweatpants while Orion donned a fitted hoodie, they settled on the couch with fresh drinks in hand. The atmosphere was relaxed yet charged with an undercurrent of anticipation. "So, what's your plan now that you're back in San Francisco?" Orion asked, leaning forward with genuine interest. Caspian took a sip of his drink, contemplating. "I'm not entirely sure yet. I thought I'd reconnect with old friends and maybe look for freelance work here. I've missed the art scene." Orion nodded thoughtfully. "You should definitely explore your options. There are some amazing galleries here that would love your work." Caspian felt a swell of gratitude for Orion's support. "Thanks. It means a lot to hear that from you." He hesitated for a moment before adding, "I've always admired your career path too. You've really made a name for yourself." Orion smiled, but there was an edge of vulnerability in his expression. "It hasn't been easy. I've had my share of setbacks and doubts." He paused, looking down at his drink as if searching for words. "But having friends like you makes it all worthwhile." The sincerity in Orion's voice struck Caspian deeply. He reached out and placed a hand on Orion's arm, feeling the warmth radiate from him. "You're doing amazing things, Orion. You deserve all the success you've achieved." Their eyes met again, and for a moment, the world outside faded away, the noise of the city and the ticking clock became distant echoes as they were drawn into each other's gaze. "Caspian," Orion began softly, breaking the spell but keeping his voice low and intimate, "can I ask you something?" "Of course," Caspian replied, curiosity piqued. "Do you ever think about what might have happened between us if we hadn't lost touch?" Orion asked, his expression earnest. Caspian felt his heart race at the question. It was as if they were finally addressing the elephant in the room. "All the time," he admitted honestly. "I've thought about it more than I'd like to admit." Orion's eyes searched Caspian's face for answers, and Caspian could feel the tension building again, the kind that made it hard to breathe but felt exhilarating all at once. "I missed you," Orion confessed quietly. "Not just as a friend but, more than that." Caspian swallowed hard, his pulse quickening at Orion's admission. "I missed you too," he said softly. The air around them thickened with unspoken words and emotions swirling like the colors in an abstract painting, a blend of fear and hope that left them both vulnerable. Orion leaned closer, their faces mere inches apart now. "What if we tried to explore this, whatever this is between us?" Caspian's breath caught in his throat as he processed Orion's words. The idea both thrilled and terrified him. It was everything he had longed for but never dared to pursue. "I'd like that," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. In an instant, they closed the distance between them, their lips meeting softly at first as if testing the waters before diving deeper into uncharted territory. The kiss ignited something within Caspian, a fire he hadn't realized was smoldering beneath the surface all these years. As they pulled away slightly, their foreheads resting against each other, Caspian felt alive in a way he hadn't experienced before, like every piece of him was finally aligning. "Wow," Orion breathed out with a smile that lit up his entire face. "Yeah," Caspian replied breathlessly, unable to contain his own grin. They spent the rest of the evening wrapped up in each other's stories and laughter, sharing dreams and fears while discovering new facets of one another that felt both familiar and exhilaratingly new. As they talked late into the night, Caspian realized this reunion was more than just rekindling an old friendship. It was about building something beautiful together, a journey neither had expected but both desperately needed. And as he looked into Orion's eyes filled with warmth and possibility, he knew this was just the beginning. The morning sun filtered through the sheer curtains of Orion's apartment, casting a soft glow across the room. Caspian stirred awake, feeling the warmth of the blanket wrapped around him. He blinked a few times, trying to shake off the remnants of sleep, and then memories of the previous night flooded back, laughter, confessions, and that electrifying kiss. A smile crept onto his face as he turned to find Orion still asleep beside him, his features relaxed and peaceful. Caspian couldn't help but admire him. The way the sunlight danced on Orion's skin made him look almost ethereal. He felt a rush of affection, realizing how much he had missed this connection, how much he had missed Orion. Quietly, he slipped out of bed, careful not to disturb him, and headed to the kitchen to make coffee. As the rich aroma filled the air, Caspian found himself lost in thought. What did this all mean? They had crossed a line from friendship into something deeper, something he had yearned for but never dared to hope for. Would it change everything between them? Would they still be able to navigate their friendship if things didn't work out? Just as he was pouring 2 mugs of steaming coffee, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned to see Orion leaning against the doorframe, his hair tousled and eyes still heavy with sleep. "Good morning," Orion said with a sleepy smile that made Caspian's heart skip a beat. "Good morning. I hope you like your coffee strong," Caspian replied, handing him a mug. Orion took a sip and sighed contentedly. "Perfect. Just like you." Caspian felt his cheeks flush at the compliment. They settled at the small kitchen table, sipping their coffee in comfortable silence for a moment before Orion broke it. "So, about last night," he began cautiously. Caspian's heart raced at the mention of their kiss. "Yeah, I've been thinking about it a lot," Orion said, his expression serious yet hopeful. "I don't want to rush into anything without knowing how we both feel." Caspian nodded, understanding where Orion was coming from. "I agree. It was amazing, but I don't want to jeopardize our friendship either." Orion leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "What if we just take it slow? See where this goes without any pressure?" Caspian felt relief wash over him at Orion's words. "I'd like that. I want to explore this, whatever it is between us." With that unspoken agreement hanging in the air, their conversation shifted back to lighter topics, favorite movies, art styles they admired, and plans for the day ahead. They decided to spend some time exploring San Francisco together, rediscovering old haunts and creating new memories. As they strolled through the bustling streets hand in hand, Caspian felt a sense of exhilaration wash over him. The city felt alive with possibilities, every corner held a new adventure waiting to unfold. They visited a quaint bookstore where they lost track of time browsing through shelves filled with stories waiting to be told. Later, they found themselves at a small cafe tucked away in an alleyway. The aroma of freshly baked pastries wafted through the air as they settled into a cozy corner table. "I can't believe I never knew about this place," Caspian said as he took a bite of a flaky croissant. "It's one of my favorites," Orion replied with a grin. "I used to come here after school to sketch." "Sketch? You never told me you were an artist too," Caspian exclaimed. Orion shrugged modestly. "It was just a hobby back then. But I've always loved capturing moments on paper." Caspian leaned closer, intrigued. "Can I see some of your sketches?" Orion hesitated for a moment before pulling out his phone and scrolling through his gallery until he found a few images. He handed it over to Caspian with an air of vulnerability. As Caspian scrolled through the sketches, beautifully detailed drawings of buildings and landscapes, he was struck by Orion's talent and passion. "These are incredible. You have such an eye for detail." Thanks, Orion replied shyly, his cheeks flushing slightly at the praise. You should showcase these more, Caspian encouraged earnestly. They deserve to be seen. Orion smiled softly but looked down at his hands as if contemplating something deeper. Maybe one day. Their conversation flowed seamlessly as they shared dreams and aspirations over coffee and pastries, each revelation drawing them closer together as they opened up about their fears and hopes for the future. After finishing their meal, they decided to take a walk along the waterfront. The sun sparkled on the bay as they strolled side by side, laughter punctuating their words like music in the air. Suddenly, Orion stopped and turned toward Caspian with an intensity that made his heart race again. Can I ask you something personal? Of course, Caspian replied curiously. What do you want out of this, whatever we're building? Orion asked earnestly. Caspian paused for a moment, considering his answer carefully. I want honesty and openness between us, he said finally. I want us to be able to share our lives without fear or judgment. Orion nodded thoughtfully before taking another step closer. And if things get complicated? Caspian took a deep breath. It was time to address their fears head-on. Then we talk about it, like we are now. Orion smiled softly at that before leaning in closer again until their foreheads touched lightly, a gesture filled with warmth and understanding. I'm glad we're doing this, he whispered, his breath mingling with Caspian's. Me too, Caspian replied just before their lips met again, a soft kiss that spoke volumes more than words ever could. As they pulled away slightly, both feeling breathless yet exhilarated by what lay ahead, Caspian knew this was only the beginning of something beautiful, a journey filled with love and discovery that would change everything between them forever. The following weeks unfolded like a vibrant tapestry, each day weaving new threads into the fabric of Caspian and Orion's relationship. They spent countless hours together, exploring the city, sharing meals, and diving into deep conversations that revealed layers of their personalities they had never shown before. The connection between them deepened, blossoming into a romance that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. One sunny Saturday afternoon, they decided to visit a local art fair. The atmosphere buzzed with creativity, artists showcasing their work, musicians playing soulful tunes, and food vendors offering tantalizing treats. Caspian felt alive in this environment, surrounded by color and passion. As they wandered through the stalls, Caspian spotted a booth filled with stunning watercolor paintings. He paused to admire a piece depicting the Golden Gate Bridge at sunset, the colors blending beautifully. This is incredible, he said, turning to Orion, who was engrossed in a nearby sculpture. Yeah, it really captures the essence of the city, Orion replied, stepping closer to Caspian. You should try painting something like this. Caspian chuckled. I'm not sure my skills are up to par with this level of artistry. Orion nudged him playfully. You'll never know until you try. Besides, I'd love to see what you create. Encouraged by Orion's enthusiasm, Caspian felt a surge of inspiration. All right, let's find a quiet spot and I'll give it a shot. They found a small park nearby where they settled on a bench under the shade of a sprawling oak tree. Caspian pulled out his sketchbook and colored pencils from his bag while Orion set up his own supplies beside him. As he began to sketch the scene in front of him, the bridge framed by trees, Caspian felt a sense of peace wash over him. The rhythmic sound of pencil on paper mixed with the distant laughter of fairgoers created a comforting backdrop. Look at you go, Orion exclaimed after watching for a while. You've got a natural talent for this. Caspian smiled at the compliment but couldn't shake off the nagging self-doubt that crept in. It's nothing compared to what you do. Don't sell yourself short, Orion replied firmly. Art is subjective. What matters is how it makes you feel. They continued working side by side, sharing occasional glances and smiles that spoke volumes about their growing affection for one another. But as the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting golden hues across the park, Caspian felt an unexpected wave of anxiety wash over him. What's wrong? Orion asked gently, sensing his shift in mood. Caspian hesitated before speaking. I've just been thinking about us. Orion put down his brush and turned fully toward him. What about us? I love spending time with you, Caspian began cautiously. But I can't help but worry about what happens if things don't work out between us. Orion's expression softened as he reached out to take Caspian's hand in his own. I get it. It's scary to open yourself up like this. He paused for a moment before continuing, but I believe we can navigate whatever comes our way. Caspian looked into Orion's eyes and saw sincerity reflected back at him, a promise that they would face challenges together rather than apart. I want to believe that, Caspian admitted quietly. Then let's take it one day at a time, Orion suggested, squeezing his hand reassuringly. We'll communicate openly about everything, fears, hopes, whatever comes up. Feeling reassured by Orion's words, Caspian nodded slowly. Okay, I can do that. With their hearts lighter, they resumed painting together until dusk settled over the park like a warm embrace. As they packed up their supplies and prepared to leave, Orion suggested grabbing dinner at a nearby restaurant known for its eclectic menu. Over dinner, they shared stories about their families and childhoods, Caspian revealing how his parents had encouraged his love for art while Orion spoke about his supportive but demanding upbringing in an architect family. I always felt pressure to succeed, Orion said thoughtfully as he twirled his pasta around his fork. It made me doubt myself sometimes. Caspian reached across the table to touch Orion's hand gently. You're doing amazing things now, you should be proud of yourself. Orion smiled appreciatively but then looked away for a moment as if lost in thought. I am proud, but there are times when I wonder if I'm truly following my passion or just living up to expectations. Caspian could sense the weight behind those words and wanted nothing more than to ease that burden for him. You deserve to pursue what makes you happy, he said earnestly. After dinner, they decided to take a stroll along the waterfront as night fell over San Francisco. The lights from the city twinkled like stars reflected on the bay's surface, a magical sight that seemed to mirror their blossoming relationship. As they walked side by side in comfortable silence, Caspian felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for having Orion in his life again, this time as more than just a friend. But just as he was beginning to relax into this newfound happiness, he spotted something out of the corner of his eye, a figure standing alone on the pier ahead. As they drew closer, Caspian's heart sank. It was Liam, his ex-boyfriend from New York, leaning against the railing with an expression that was both familiar and unsettling. Caspian, Liam called out as soon as he noticed them approaching. The tension in the air thickened instantly. Caspian glanced at Orion, whose expression shifted from curiosity to concern. Hey, what are you doing here? Caspian asked cautiously. Liam stepped forward with an air of familiarity that made Caspian uncomfortable. I just moved back here, thought I'd check out some old spots. His gaze flickered between Caspian and Orion before settling on Caspian again. I didn't expect to see you here with someone else. Orion stood tall beside Caspian but didn't say anything. He seemed unsure how to navigate this unexpected encounter. Yeah, Caspian replied slowly, trying to keep his composure despite feeling vulnerable under Liam's scrutiny. This is Orion, my friend. Liam raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. Instead, he offered an awkward smile that felt forced and hollow. I hope you're doing well, Liam said finally before turning back toward the water as if lost in thought again. Caspian exchanged glances with Orion. He could feel tension radiating between them like static electricity, a reminder of unresolved feelings from his past colliding with new possibilities in front of him. Maybe we should go, Orion suggested quietly after an uncomfortable silence stretched on too long. Caspian nodded gratefully. He needed space away from Liam's presence. The memories flooding back were overwhelming enough without adding more complications into the mix. As they walked away from the pier hand in hand under the shimmering lights of San Francisco, Caspian couldn't shake off the feeling that things were about to get complicated, but he also knew that whatever lay ahead wouldn't change how he felt about Orion or what they were building together. The days following the unexpected encounter with Liam felt heavy for Caspian. Though he tried to shake off the discomfort, the memory lingered like a shadow, casting doubt on the budding relationship he had with Orion. They continued to spend time together, but an unspoken tension hung in the air, making every moment feel both precious and precarious. One rainy evening, as they cuddled under a blanket on Orion's couch, watching a movie, Caspian's mind drifted back to that fateful night at the pier. He felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach. Orion was engrossed in the film, laughing at the comedic moments, but Caspian couldn't focus. He turned to Orion, who looked so relaxed, so carefree, and felt a pang of guilt for what he was about to say. Orion, he began hesitantly. Yeah, Orion replied, glancing over with curiosity. Caspian took a deep breath. Can we talk about what happened with Liam? Orion's expression shifted slightly, his brow furrowing as he paused the movie. Sure. What's on your mind? I didn't expect to see him again. Not like that, Caspian admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. It brought back a lot of memories, some good but mostly complicated. Orion nodded slowly, his gaze steady and understanding. I get it. It must have been jarring. I'm just worried, Caspian continued, feeling vulnerable as he laid his emotions bare. What if he tries to come back into my life? What if he wants to rekindle things? Orion's expression hardened slightly at the mention of Liam's name. You don't want that, do you? Caspian hesitated. I don't know. Part of me feels like I should be over it by now, but seeing him again stirred up feelings I thought I had buried. Orion shifted closer, their knees touching as he looked deeply into Caspian's eyes. Caspian, you're allowed to feel conflicted. It's okay to have those feelings, it doesn't mean you want him back. I know, Caspian replied softly. But I also don't want to hurt you in the process. Hey, Orion said firmly, placing a hand on Caspian's shoulder. You're not going to hurt me by being honest about your feelings. We're in this together. Caspian felt a rush of gratitude wash over him at Orion's reassurance. I appreciate that, he said quietly. But we need to talk about this openly, Orion continued, his voice steady but gentle. If you're feeling uncertain or if something is bothering you, we can work through it together. Caspian nodded slowly, feeling the weight of his worries lift just a little. You're right. As they resumed the movie, Caspian could sense that their conversation had opened a door between them, a door that allowed for vulnerability and honesty that had previously felt daunting. Later that week, they decided to meet up with friends for dinner at a lively restaurant downtown. The atmosphere buzzed with laughter and chatter as they joined their friends at a long table filled with plates of colorful dishes and clinking glasses. Caspian tried to immerse himself in the festivities but found himself glancing at Orion more often than not, his heart swelling with affection each time their eyes met across the table. As the night wore on and drinks flowed freely, Caspian felt himself relax amidst the laughter and camaraderie of their friends. But just as he was starting to enjoy himself fully, he caught sight of Liam entering the restaurant with a group of acquaintances. His heart sank as Liam scanned the room and locked eyes with him for what felt like an eternity before making his way toward their table. Hey, mind if I join? Liam asked casually as if nothing had happened between them. Caspian glanced at Orion, who wore an expression that was both guarded and tense. Sure, Caspian replied reluctantly. Liam slid into an empty seat beside him while Orion shifted slightly away from them, an unspoken barrier forming between them. The conversation flowed awkwardly at first as Liam tried to engage everyone in light banter while Caspian felt increasingly uncomfortable under his gaze. So, how have you been? Liam asked directly, turning his attention back to Caspian. I've been good, Caspian replied cautiously. Just getting settled back in. Nice. You should show me around sometime, Liam suggested with an easy smile that made Caspian bristle inside. Orion cleared his throat loudly before speaking up. Actually, Caspian has been pretty busy lately, he interjected smoothly but firmly. He's been spending time with friends and focusing on his art. Caspian shot Orion a grateful glance, it was clear he was trying to protect him from Liam's charm. Right, Liam said slowly, sensing the tension but seemingly unfazed by it. He turned back toward Caspian with an intensity that made him uncomfortable again. Well, let me know if you want to catch up sometime. Sure, Caspian replied noncommittally before turning away from him and engaging in conversation with another friend across the table. As the night progressed and laughter filled the air once more, Caspian couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that lingered after Liam's arrival. He found himself stealing glances at Orion throughout the evening. Each time their eyes met, he could see concern etched on Orion's face. When they finally left the restaurant later that night, Orion fell into step beside him as they walked down the street under twinkling lights. Are you okay? Orion asked quietly after a moment of silence stretched between them. Caspian sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair in frustration. I don't know how I feel about seeing Liam again. Orion nodded thoughtfully before speaking carefully. It's understandable that it would stir up old feelings, especially since you two have history. I just wish I could move past it, Caspian admitted softly. You will, Orion reassured him gently. But it might take time, and that's perfectly okay. As they reached a quiet park bench illuminated by soft lamplight, they sat down together side by side. The cool night air wrapped around them like a comforting blanket as they took a moment to breathe deeply together. "What do you need right now?" Orion asked sincerely. Caspian looked over at him, his heart swelling with gratitude for how supportive he was being through all this turmoil. I need us to be open about everything, even when it feels uncomfortable." Orion smiled warmly and nodded in agreement. Absolutely. Feeling emboldened by their conversation earlier and this newfound clarity between them, Caspian leaned closer until their shoulders touched lightly, a gesture filled with warmth and understanding. "Thank you for being patient with me," he said softly. "I'll always be here for you," Orion replied earnestly before leaning in closer until their lips met in a gentle kiss, a kiss filled with promise and reassurance amid uncertainty. As they pulled away slightly but remained close enough for comfort under the stars above them, Caspian knew this was just another step forward on their journey together, a journey filled with love and discovery despite any bumps along the way. The following weeks felt like a whirlwind of emotions for Caspian and Orion. They navigated the complexities of their relationship, growing closer while also confronting the shadows of Caspian's past with Liam. Each day brought new challenges, but it also deepened their bond in ways neither of them had anticipated. As spring blossomed in San Francisco, the city transformed into a vibrant canvas of colors. Flowers bloomed in parks, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming jasmine. It was during this beautiful season that Orion surprised Caspian with an idea that made his heart race with excitement. "Let's have a picnic at Golden Gate Park this weekend," Orion suggested one evening as they lounged on the couch, sharing a bowl of popcorn while watching a movie. Caspian's eyes lit up at the thought. "That sounds amazing. We can bring some art supplies and sketch the scenery." "Exactly." Orion grinned, his enthusiasm infectious. "I'll make us some sandwiches, and you can bring your sketchbook." The days leading up to the picnic were filled with anticipation. Caspian found himself daydreaming about spending a sunny afternoon with Orion, surrounded by nature and laughter. He carefully packed his favorite sketchbook and colored pencils, hoping to capture the beauty of the park in a way that reflected his feelings for Orion. On the day of the picnic, the sun shone brightly in a clear blue sky as they arrived at Golden Gate Park. The vibrant greens of the grass and trees created a picturesque backdrop that felt like something out of a dream. They found a cozy spot beneath a large oak tree, its branches swaying gently in the breeze. Orion spread out a blanket while Caspian unpacked their lunch, homemade sandwiches, fresh fruit, and sparkling water. As they settled down to eat, laughter bubbled between them, filling the air with warmth and joy. "This is perfect," Caspian said, taking in their surroundings. "I can't believe we've never done this before." Orion smiled as he took a bite of his sandwich. "We should make it a regular thing. Just us and nature." After finishing their meal, they cleared away their plates and pulled out their art supplies. Caspian felt an exhilarating rush as he opened his sketchbook, ready to capture the beauty around him. He glanced over at Orion, who was already lost in his own world of creativity. As Caspian began to sketch the scene before him, the sprawling park with people enjoying picnics, children playing games, and couples strolling hand in hand, he felt an overwhelming sense of peace wash over him. The act of creating art had always been therapeutic for him, but doing it alongside Orion made it even more special. "Hey," Orion called softly after a while, breaking Caspian's concentration. "What do you think?" Caspian looked up to see Orion holding up his own sketch, a beautifully detailed drawing of the oak tree under which they sat, complete with intricate leaves and dappled sunlight filtering through. "It's incredible," Caspian exclaimed genuinely. "You have such talent." Orion beamed at the praise but then turned serious for a moment. "I've been thinking about us." Caspian's heart raced at the sudden shift in tone. "What about us?" "I want to know what you envision for our future," Orion said carefully. "Where do you see this going?" Caspian felt a mix of excitement and apprehension at the question. It was something he had thought about often but hadn't fully articulated yet. "I see us continuing to grow together," he began slowly, choosing his words carefully. "I want to explore this connection we have, see where it leads us without fear or hesitation." Orion nodded thoughtfully, his expression earnest as he listened intently. "And if things get complicated? If we face challenges?" Caspian took a deep breath, feeling more confident now that they were having this conversation openly. Then we talk about it, like we always have. I don't want to hide anything from you, I want us to be partners in every sense. A smile broke across Orion's face as he reached out to take Caspian's hand in his own. I feel the same way. They shared a moment of silence, their fingers intertwined as they soaked in each other's presence beneath the sprawling oak tree. The world around them faded away, the laughter of children and chirping birds became distant sounds as they focused solely on one another. Can I show you something? Orion asked suddenly, breaking their reverie. Of course, Caspian replied curiously. Orion rummaged through his bag and pulled out a small notebook filled with sketches, each page brimming with ideas for architectural designs he had been working on outside of his usual projects. I've been working on some concepts for my portfolio, Orion explained as he flipped through pages filled with intricate designs and innovative structures. Caspian was mesmerized by Orion's creativity and vision. Each sketch reflected not only talent but also passion, a glimpse into what drove him as an artist. These are amazing, Caspian said genuinely as he admired each piece. You have such a unique perspective on architecture. Thanks, Orion replied shyly but with pride shining in his eyes. I've always wanted to create spaces that inspire people, just like art does. As they continued to share their creative worlds with one another, Caspian showing sketches from his travels while Orion shared dreams for future projects, they felt an even deeper connection forming between them. Eventually, they decided to take a break from sketching and simply enjoy each other's company under the sun-dappled branches above them. They lay back on the blanket side by side, hands still intertwined as they gazed up at the sky. Do you ever think about what it would be like if we lived together? Caspian asked suddenly, feeling bold enough to voice what had been lingering in his mind. Orion turned to look at him with wide eyes filled with surprise and delight. Honestly, I've thought about it more than once. Caspian felt his heart flutter at that admission. Really? What would that look like for you? I imagine us creating our own space, decorating it together with art and memories, Orion mused dreamily. A place where we can both thrive creatively. I love that idea, Caspian said softly. It feels like home already. As they lay there under the warm sun, sharing dreams and hopes for their future together, Caspian realized how far they had come since that first night back in San Francisco. The uncertainty had transformed into something beautiful and promising. In that moment of clarity amidst laughter and warmth, Caspian knew without a doubt that whatever challenges lay ahead, whether it was dealing with Liam or navigating life together, they would face them hand in hand. And as he turned to look at Orion, the man who had become so much more than just a friend, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for this journey they were embarking on together, a journey filled with love, creativity, and endless possibilities. With hearts full of hope and laughter echoing around them like music from afar, they shared another kiss beneath the sprawling oak tree, a kiss that sealed their commitment to one another as they stepped boldly into whatever awaited them next.